This book completely changed my life. I read it in 2020 during COVID when I was just looking to get a mindset shift, and I had read a few rather books around that time and stumbled upon The Courage to Be Disliked after really just trying to get better at expressing my feelings and trying to get better at recovery during, quite honestly, just chaos. And so this book is written by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga. These are two Japanese writers who are using the theories of Austrian psychologist Alfred Adler. And so in this book, the story is told instead of from a tell, they're showing you. So they're using two characters in a story to explain these concepts. The student and the professor who are getting into a mentor relationship, and the student comes every few days to learn more and to have some of his ideas challenged by this professor. And the core premise is all problems are interpersonal relationship problems. And when you think about that, when you are, stressed about something, and the fears that you're feeling are overwhelming your body, even though that is real, this book challenges that idea with the idea that the problem itself is interpersonal. So it's either how I want you to see me or how being in conflict, right? Like my ability to be that person. And if you are willing to lean into the idea of, okay, if the problem itself with being late on a deadline is interpersonal, in this exercise, we're going to say, hey, the problem is really because of how you feel you're going to lose face for not being able to accomplish this in the right time. Like the deadline itself is about, most problems are interpersonal. And so the deadline itself is about that relationship. And so even if there's broader goals, and I find that to be mostly true, there's a few stories that are told to illustrate the points. One is that there was this girl that used to have a fear of blushing, and she also built a relationship with this professor. And in her fear of blushing, she she also realized that she was attracted to this guy, and she wanted to know how he felt about her. And so she was talking to this professor about this fear, and he pointed out that her fear, as she mentioned, her fear of blushing was stopping her from communicating her feelings with this guy. And then the professor said, well, then there you have it. You manufactured this fear of blushing in order to stop yourself from doing the talking to this guy and confessing your feelings. Her fear of blushing left when the guy actually confessed his feelings to her before she got a chance to hit the gun. So there is so much truth to that. A lot of physiological symptoms manifest from psychological fears and stressors. We all know that stress kills in a lot of ways. And stress creates stress creates physiological responses. And so another example is if you were on an island and you had all your needs met on this island, you had all the food you needed, you were, able to construct some sort of shelter, etc. There was clean water, all the things you needed. Would that feel like freedom? You don't have anybody else's objectives pressuring on you, but it wouldn't. Like, I know I would feel trapped on that island in a lot of ways if I couldn't communicate with other people. It wouldn't feel like freedom. And it's ironic because there's this movie coming soon about this that I'm interested in watching. I will put the name of the movie in the description box. The truth is that we are connected creatures that are trying to be in relationship with each other, and we really are invested in our standing in our communities because we are communal animals. And so the problems that we have come up usually not because of provision, it's because somebody has something that you need. There's conflict there in terms of interest. And so, moving on from that idea, the only true freedom is if you have the courage to be disliked. You will have interpersonal conflict. But when you don't feel like you can show up with in your fullest truth and honesty, that's where entrapment starts to come in. That's where you start to feel like you are being restricted by those around you. If you would only be willing to have the courage to be disliked, to show up in your full self, and to reject the idea that the people who might dislike it invalidate it, then if you're willing to move in that direction, you are truly free. And it's just the truth. And I love the way that the truth just sings. That when I read this book, so many good takeaways. And I read the next one after it called The Courage to Be Happy. And spoiler alert, The Courage to Be Happy is about the courage to love other people. It's an incredible book full with the absolute truth. And so, read at your own, discretion, because it will mess around and heal you. So in this, but we're still on the courage to be disliked. So there's also this idea of freedom from past trauma. So in contrast to Freud, Adler didn't think we were determined by our past experiences, because we can still, like right now, those past experiences aren't real. You can make the decisions that you want to make now based off of what's in front of you now. You don't have to make the decision that is caused by the past. My doggy is messing with the light. So that was a big shock, right? The idea that that the past trauma only really has the impact on you that you let it have, basically. And for a long time in my life, that was really true. And now, through this recognition, sometimes you get to challenge yourself, like, okay, things can come up for you, but the decision you make right now and your outcomes just in general are for you to make. They're not inevitable. Another point, and sorry, before, in the past trauma, you can now be free. You don't have to choose to live in the past. If you're willing to commit to being present, and I'm going to tell you something about being present. It is so incredibly helpful. It's the most helpful skill I've ever really learned, because I struggle with anxiety. I struggle with, I used to have panic attacks when I was a kid. And now, well, I thought it was asthma, but then I realized I could slow my breathing down and calm myself down, and then I stopped having asthma attacks after I used certain breathing techniques that were just really not even techniques. I just made them up. I just kind of like learned how to become present, and not let those ideas start to spiral. And when you think about living in the past, consider, like, a lot of those people had a lot of power over you, but if you are an adult, in many ways, those people no longer have that same amount of leverage. And so there are ways to be free from that narrative. The next one is that you can now separate your tasks. So all problems are interpersonal, right? So how do we interact with each other? Show up honestly, and then separate the tasks, meaning whatever that person's response is, whatever you put out into the world, it's everybody else's task to do what they're going to do with it if it crossed their paths. Additionally, like, if you're trying to love somebody, or if you're trying to show up in a certain way for work, don't take on the burden of somebody else's position. Like, as a client of mine, I will be empathetic towards you, but there is no need to take on anybody else's tasks. And so, because relationships are about two people. It takes two to tango. And it's so true. And so if we separate the tasks, I get to show up in my true, honest self, and you get to show up in your true, honest self. And then we get to commune. Ollie, stop touching it. We get to sorry. So if all problems are, okay, wait, where was I? Separating tasks. So it's really just important for you to understand what responsibilities belong to you versus the responsibilities of others, because it's really crucial for healthy relationships. People want to give love, right? And so that's the courage to be happy. It is you get the most happiness out of giving love. And and people don't often appreciate somebody stepping into their territory and making choices for them. They'll often feel manipulated if you overcompensate and go into things that are their decision. For example, if you're trying to build a relationship with a new client and you are putting your head in their pocket, you are putting your head in their decision, people often eventually start feeling micromanaged and resentful because it is their task to decide what they need, and what you are going to provide them is your task to decide. So they get to come to you with their needs, and you get to come to them with the solutions and the skills and the products that you have to offer. But when you start edging into the territory of somebody else, it often feels violating, and it doesn't create a healthy relationship with that person. It often creates a relationship that is going to ultimately cause resentment and bruise resentment. And so we must separate our tasks, and when we're asking for help, trust and enable that person, but those tasks are their tasks to own. And there's this really impactful statement a pastor of mine made years ago. I'm a spiritual person, so some of this might come up from time to time. But he said that when you are giving money to somebody, the decision, when you are, if you were to try to put restrictions on it, and if you were trying to control how that person uses that money, often there's a violation there, because there is. And the violation is you're stripping that person of their dignity. The dignity is so key. And let me look up literally the meaning of dignity. What does dignity mean? Because this is a word worth defining. Your inherent self-worth and the value that exists independently of external validation or accomplishments. It's a core concept that aligns to the book's central message. So it's about dignity in that person's ability to choose what's best for them in their life. Like, if there is a truth that I know, is that if you start making decisions for other people, they resent it. So you gotta separate the tasks. And you'll resent having to overcompensate and do more than what is your task. So it's just, there's no healthy relationship that comes from that. And then the last one is community feeling. So the importance of contributing to the greater good and finding meaning in life through social connection. This world is gorgeous and fabulous, and God really decked this mess out with so many different things, so many different terrains and animals and plants and people and wonders, just wonders, spectacular wonders in the sky, on the ground, in the water. And and the fire, and I know that for the most of us, though we're interested in these things, maybe if you're into science, or math, or just STEM in general, these things can be interesting. Ultimately, though, we are trying to contribute to each other. You know, most people want to have a job that is helping. And it is because we are all trying to contribute to community and to leave our lasting effect on the world. And so it's important to invest in that, to recognize that human beings are social animals first. The reason why we are able to dominate the living organisms on this earth is because of our collective knowledge sharing over the years and our collective efforts driving each other forwards to these different discoveries so that we can make the world a better place. And so it's important to just recognize that that's just a cheat code. It's just the truth. So if you're looking to interrogate some feelings that are coming up, recognize that it is absolutely normal and in all of us that those are all of our goals, right? And so when we are willing to have the courage to be disliked, though, because that's the foundational truth, you're able to not feel trapped by the community, by the community's whims and sentiments, by the community's cruelty, because it takes courage to show up as your full, authentic self. And your gifts and what you're contributing to the world, every business in order to truly get a vibe that brings people in and makes people feel safe and with their people and in community, it's important to name your boundaries and who you show up as with your values, because people who resonate with those values will come. And you know, I love Rihanna, for example, and in her lore, her decision to go into good girl gone bad territory was all her own. It was her choosing to show up fully as herself. And because she wasn't trying to stay in the same lane as all the other women, she was left to her own devices. Jay-Z was more into Tierra Marie, so he was focusing the resources there. So she had the space to play and to create a lane for herself. And that lane will never, ever, ever be usurped by anyone else, because only Rihanna can do Rihanna. And we're all looking for our thing, and our thing requires us showing up in our full, authentic self. If you can't commit to honesty with yourself in terms of your desires, your emotions, your rationale, and your relationship with other people, because we're all equal. All human beings are equal. And therefore, when we're doing hiding in order to hide our humanity and our faults because of the high expectations and the high cost of this conflict over resources that human beings are always involved in, you don't get to see your potential, because your full potential is in your truth. And that doesn't mean that everything that comes to your head is a voice from God. That doesn't mean that you are told what you're supposed to be doing. We're all going to have to discover it. And that's the reason why we're here for the time that we are, to go through the process of discovering it. And so I built Recall It All, and my mission is to create space for you to do and to discover the work, and for you to connect with your people and to serve your people, packaged in a way that gives you the lifestyle that you want. I will use my creativity. We will co-create, and the other entrepreneurs around in this membership are there also cheering you on in the same mindset. People who are like-minded are available to you to truly help you figure that thing out. You know, this world is incredibly limiting when we lose all of our resources and we forget each other. When we start being resource first instead of community minded. And we don't enjoy, I did not enjoy, maybe the introverts enjoyed 2020. I'll have to ask them. Introverts, sound down below in terms of the lifestyle, not accusing introverts of celebrating anybody being sick. Just, did you enjoy being home all the time? And if you were by yourself and you felt limited in community, what was that experience? Please sound off in the comments. As an extrovert and a people person, I know that I was not enjoying myself. And I am now more clear than ever that these are truly foundational truths, because as we are talking about the community feeling and the separation of tasks and the courage to be disliked, what comes up for you? I know that after reading this book, I learned it all live. I was constantly and am constantly, in situations that make me wonder, if I'm going to take plan A or plan B, or I need to mistrust myself. Not because my limitations really, like, is this a limitation? And yes, we all have limitations, and we get to exercise those muscles so that we can grow our capacity, right? I will do a book review on growth mindset versus fixed mindset, because mindset, it was a important concept. But on the courage to be disliked, I pulled up some more about dignity, and if you're thinking about this idea, right? In order to have that courage, you must recognize the foundational truth of your inherent worth as a human being, regardless of your success or failure or other people's opinions. All living creatures are worthy of being here and for being taken care of here. And though there are many who are cruel, that would harm other people, there is inherent dignity in all human beings. And in that truth, we can really just kind of take a second to take that in, right? You can have dignity right now, no matter what you look like, no matter what your story is. Your choices moving forward are for you to decide, and God can twist the plot at any time. And so, though I know this world is cruel, I want to pose that you can choose right now to take your dignity back, because if you gave it away to anybody else, leveraged it for prestige. So what I mean by that is didn't show up honestly, let the version of you that wanted to show up honestly hide because you doubted that the efficacy of that person. Even if the people in front of you reject you, as long as you are attempting to serve your community, you can always play with the packaging. You can always change up the different features that are involved. Eventually, you will find that the people who are in need of what you offer, and because you're trying to meet a need. You're trying to meet a need that you recognize. And so there will be somebody that needs that thing that you have to go find. And so you don't, also, even if you don't find that person that needs that thing, it doesn't mean you have no value. Switch up the offer, switch up the way you're packaging it. You can truly play here on earth and give yourself an opportunity to do that. A big part of the value of privilege is the opportunity to have second chances, to have somebody think better of you that would allow you to try again. In your own mind, you must be willing to give yourself that. And the more and more you give yourself that, is the more and more you'll be able to give that to others. And so when you respect other people's autonomy, remember we talked about the separation of tasks. When you recognize your dignity at all times and are able to look eye to eye to the other people you're talking to and communing with, when you are not leveraging that dignity and worthiness of the person that you're showing up as and just standing in present, hello, this is me, this is how I'm showing up, etc. And regardless of the rejection or the acceptance or the response, you're able to truly see if you can fly and to truly make an impression on this world. And I can't wait to see you do it. I hope you give this book a read. It was so interesting, and I love the fact that they didn't choose to talk at us and tell the story. They showed us the truth of these ideas using an often petulant, deeply heartbroken person talking about the realities of being human and feeling the weight of inferiority. We are not gods. We have limited capacity. And so, though there can be mountains moved, right? It's still going to take us being communal if we're going to move a mountain anyway. And also, so this was one of the stories that was in it. The guy, the young boy, the young student was talking about his self-hatred and the feeling that he is worthless. And the professor asked him, if you didn't have this feeling, what would you do? And he went into this diatribe about there's no way, I'm so inherently awful, and nobody would ever want to be around me, and I can't do any of those things because I'm so inherently awful. And he's like, there it is. It's what do you have? We found it. If you were willing to show up in your authenticity, your fear is that people wouldn't accept you. Your fear is that that person wouldn't be able to have a life where they are valued, enjoying themselves, a pleasure to be around, etc. And that person would be ultimately rejected. If you're willing to have the courage to be disliked and give that person a chance, then a lot of the internal conflict will dissipate and you'll feel a lot freer. I hope this was helpful. I hope this was interesting. Again, one of the most important books I've ever read in terms of my psychology and how I view the world. I hope you enjoyed this kind of review, and I hope you check out the book. Have like, share, and subscribe, and have a fabulous rest of your day.